Let's face it, being a man today is more complicated than ever. Society demands strength, but also vulnerability. Leadership, but also empathy. Confidence, yet humility. Somewhere along the way, many men confuse arrogance for power, stubbornness for conviction, and emotional detachment for maturity. And in that confusion, something dangerous happens. Foolishness is mistaken for masculinity. No man wants to be called foolish. It stings the ego more than being called weak or ignorant. Yet foolishness isn't always loud or obvious. Sometimes it's quiet, subtle, even masked behind success or charm. You may hold a prestigious job, drive an expensive car, or have thousands of followers online, but none of that exempts you from being a fool. In fact, the foolish man often hides behind these very things, using external validation to cover up internal insecurity. Let me be clear, this is not a personal attack. This is a wake-up call. Because every man, yes, every single one, has played the fool at some point. The question is not, have you ever been foolish, but rather, are you still living foolishly and refusing to see it? The worst kind of foolishness is the kind that goes unrecognized. The man who continues to destroy his relationships, sabotage his future, and dismiss wisdom because of his pride is not only foolish, he's dangerous to himself and to others. But here's the good news. Foolishness is not permanent. It's not a life sentence. The key is awareness. You can't fix what you won't face, and you won't face what you refuse to name. So today, we're going to name it. We're going to shine a light on 5 signs, clear, undeniable, and often painful signs, that reveal whether a man is living foolishly. These are not meant to shame you, but to challenge you. Because if you truly want to grow into a man of strength, wisdom, and depth, you have to be willing to confront the parts of yourself that are holding you back. This isn't about your IQ. Some of the smartest men in the world make the dumbest life choices. This isn't about how much money you have, how many women you've dated, or how many books you've read. This is about character, about mindset, about your willingness to grow. If you're brave enough to look in the mirror, not the one that reflects your face, but the one that reflects your soul, then keep listening. Because what comes next may sting your pride, but it could save your life, your relationships, and your future. Let's begin with the first sign. Foolishness begins in the mind. Before a man ruins his life, he ruins his thoughts. Foolishness doesn't appear out of nowhere. It takes root in the mind, grows quietly in the shadows, and eventually dominates everything. How a man sees himself, how he treats others, and how he navigates the world. And the tragic part? He often doesn't even realize it. He thinks he's in control. He thinks he's being strong. He thinks he's being a real man. But deep down, he's drifting further from wisdom and closer to self-destruction. The first sign you may be a foolish man is this. You let others think for you. In other words, you lack critical thought. You borrow opinions instead of forming your own. You follow trends, echo what others say, and shape your values based on approval, not principle. You fear standing alone, so you hide in the crowd. And when people challenge you, you either retreat in silence or respond in aggression, because deep down, you have no real foundation of your own. This isn't about being quiet or introverted. This is about being spineless. A man without independent thought is a man who can be manipulated by politicians, by influencers, by women, by friends, even by lies he tells himself. He has no compass. He wakes up each day and reacts, instead of living with purpose. He avoids reflection because deep down, he knows he hasn't really developed himself. Ask yourself, when was the last time you challenged your own beliefs? When was the last time you admitted, maybe I was wrong? If that feels impossible, you're already in dangerous territory. Foolish men fear self-examination. Wise men embrace it. The second sign is this. You believe you're always right. Now this one is subtle, because on the surface, confidence looks like strength. But don't confuse confidence with arrogance. A wise man has conviction, but he's also teachable. A foolish man, however, is addicted to being right. He would rather lose a relationship than admit fault. He would rather walk blindly into disaster than say, I didn't see that coming. If you're the kind of man who can't apologize, can't receive feedback, and can't admit when you've messed up, you're not strong. You're fragile. Because only fragile egos need to pretend to be perfect. Let me paint the picture. You're in an argument. She's pointing out something you did wrong. Instead of listening, you raise your voice. You twist the story. You find some unrelated moment from 6 months ago to throw in her face. Why? Because somewhere in your mind, admitting fault feels like weakness. You think saying, "I was wrong," will make her stop respecting you. You believe vulnerability will make you look small. But let me tell you something that may shake you. Real strength is found in humility. The men who lead empires, build legacies, and earn respect aren't the ones who bark the loudest. They're the ones who listen, adapt, and grow. If you always need to win the argument, you've already lost the relationship. If you always need to defend your pride, you've already surrendered your wisdom. Foolishness is not just about lacking knowledge. It's about lacking the courage to admit you don't know everything. And that kind of pride, it's a silent killer. It ruins marriages. It breaks friendships. It drives sons away from fathers and teams away from their leaders. All because one man couldn't say the simple words, "You're right. I was wrong." So ask yourself honestly, do I take criticism as an attack or as an opportunity? When someone gives me feedback, do I shut down or lean in? Do I ask questions or do I look for ways to prove them wrong? The answer to those questions reveals whether you're growing or just aging. Let's be real. Every man has moments of pride. Every man struggles with his ego. But the foolish man lives in that state permanently. He becomes allergic to growth, allergic to wisdom, allergic to truth, because all of it threatens the image he's built of himself. But here's what separates the wise from the foolish: awareness. Awareness is the beginning of transformation. You cannot change what you will not name. You cannot evolve while pretending you're already complete. So let's recap. If you're constantly echoing the opinions of others, unable to stand on your own thoughts, you're not thinking, you're outsourcing your mind. If you refuse to admit fault, unable to learn from mistakes, you're not being confident, you're being defensive. And defensive men don't grow. They just repeat the same mistakes louder each time. Foolishness always starts in the mind. But if you catch it there, if you expose it, challenge it, and face it, you can uproot it before it infects your life. Look, nobody wants to admit they've been foolish. But ironically, the very act of admitting it is the beginning of becoming wise. Because wisdom doesn't come from always being right. It comes from the willingness to be wrong and still move forward. You want to be a real man? Start with your mind. Clean it out. Examine your beliefs. Question your behaviors. Invite truth, even when it stings. Especially when it stings. Because the pain of honesty is temporary, but the pain of foolishness, that can last a lifetime. Now that we've uncovered how foolishness begins in the mind, we need to talk about how it shows up in your relationships. Because the way a man thinks is one thing, but the way he treats others, that's where the real damage begins. Foolishness in how you treat people. A man's intelligence is not just shown in how he speaks, but in how he treats people who can offer him nothing. You want to know what separates a wise man from a fool? Watch how he treats a waiter. Watch how he talks to a janitor. Watch how he speaks to the woman he's no longer trying to impress. You'll see everything. We're now moving into the space where foolishness does the most damage, not just to your mind, but to your relationships, your reputation, your legacy. Because once foolish thinking becomes a habit, it shows up in how you treat people. Let's begin with sign number 3. You judge people based on appearances, status, or what they can offer you. Foolish men are shallow, not because they're evil, but because they've never learned to look deeper than the surface. They measure success by money. They measure people by titles. They treat others based on how much those people benefit them. If someone's attractive, successful, or powerful, they show respect. If someone is plain, broke, or beneath their standards, they dismiss, ignore, or mock. And when they think no one's watching, their true self is revealed. Here's a hard truth. If your kindness depends on the other person's status, your character is bankrupt. Wise men know that real power comes from consistency. How you treat people when there's nothing to gain. A foolish man only turns on the charm when there's a reward. He's nice to his boss, rude to the cleaner, sweet to a pretty woman, dismissive to an older lady, generous to his wealthy friends, arrogant with the poor. That's not charm. That's cowardice dressed in a suit. Let me ask you, who are you when no one's watching? How do you speak to those who can't improve your image? How do you treat the invisible people, the ones most others ignore? Because if your respect has a price tag, your dignity is for sale. The fourth sign is perhaps even more personal, more damaging, and more revealing. Sign number 4. You see women as objects, not people. Now, I know this one's going to sting, but if you flinch when I say that, good. That means we're hitting something real. Let's be honest. Many men, without even realizing it, were conditioned to believe that women exist to serve, entertain, or please them. They see relationships as transactions. They think attention should be earned with gifts. That sex is a prize to be won. That if a woman says no, she's playing games. That if she walks away, she must be confused. A foolish man believes women owe him something simply because he shows interest. A wise man knows that love, respect, and connection are earned through character, not charm, not pressure, not persistence. Here's how foolishness shows up in dating and relationships. You get angry when she sets a boundary. You feel rejected when she doesn't respond with excitement. You manipulate her with guilt, shame, or silence. You think being a man means controlling the situation. Let me make something very clear. If your masculinity depends on how much control you have over a woman, it's not masculinity. It's insecurity. A foolish man doesn't know how to handle rejection. He doesn't know how to respect emotional space. He confuses dominance with leadership. And worst of all, he surrounds himself with other foolish men who cheer him on, never realizing they're all sinking in the same toxic swamp together. But the truth is simple. Women are not mirrors for your ego. They are not characters in your story. They are human beings with dreams, fears, boundaries, and power. And if you don't learn to honor that, you're not just foolish, you're dangerous. Foolish men leave a trail of broken trust, bruised hearts, and damaged reputations. They think they're being alpha or dominant, but really, they're just loud boys in grown-up bodies. And eventually, whether through heartbreak, divorce, scandal, or deep loneliness, they pay the price. Now you might be thinking, but I'm not like that. I respect women. Good. Then prove it in how you speak about them when they're not around. Prove it by how you treat the ones who reject you. Prove it in how you respond when she says, "That made me uncomfortable." Prove it by being safe, respectful, emotionally present, not performative, not manipulative, not prideful. Because the foolish man is obsessed with being chosen. The wise man is focused on becoming someone worth choosing. So let's recap what we've covered in this part. If you judge people based on looks, wealth, or status, you're not discerning, you're shallow. And shallowness is a symptom of foolishness. If you treat women like rewards, problems, or puzzles to solve, you're not powerful, you're immature. And immaturity is fertile ground for foolish choices. Here's the painful part. Many men don't realize how much damage they've already done until it's too late. Until she leaves. Until the respect is gone. Until they're sitting alone, wondering why no one wants to stay close to them. And when that moment comes, the foolish man blames others. The wise man reflects. You still have time. Time to learn. Time to grow. Time to shift how you see others. Not as tools for your comfort, but as mirrors that reflect your values. Because ultimately, how you treat others, especially those who owe you nothing, reveals who you really are. In part 3, we'll uncover the final and perhaps most destructive sign of a foolish man, the refusal to grow. Because foolishness, left unchecked, always leads to stagnation and eventually regret. But before we get there, take a moment. Look around your life. Who have you hurt with your foolishness? Who do you still have time to love better? It's not too late to stop being foolish, but it starts with seeing the truth, the refusal to grow, and how to break the cycle. The final and most dangerous sign of a foolish man isn't how he thinks or how he treats others. It's what he does with the truth. Because life has a way of speaking to every man. It speaks through pain, through failure, through rejection, through sleepless nights and broken plans. Life throws challenge after challenge, not to destroy you, but to wake you up, to shake you out of your delusions, to pull you out of your foolishness. But here's the tragedy. A foolish man refuses to grow. That's sign number 5. You reject personal growth. You ignore the lessons. You avoid self-reflection. You double down on pride, on bad habits, on outdated mindsets. You act like you're fine when you're falling apart. You pretend you're winning when everyone around you can see you're slowly self-destructing. Why? Because it's easier to defend the illusion than it is to confront the truth. Let's be honest. Growth is uncomfortable. It demands change. It requires sacrifice. It asks questions you don't want to answer. Why do I keep ruining my relationships? Why am I stuck in the same place year after year? Why do people stop trusting me? Why am I still blaming others for problems I created? A foolish man doesn't want those answers. Because answers lead to accountability. And accountability means you can no longer play the victim in your own life. Instead, he clings to excuses. That's just who I am. Life is unfair. Women are all the same. Nobody understands me. If they respected me, I'd change. But growth doesn't wait for perfect conditions. It doesn't happen when it's convenient. It happens when you choose it, even when it hurts. Here's the brutal truth. You will not rise by accident. You won't wake up one day magically wiser, kinder, stronger, more respected. Growth is not automatic. It's intentional. And the longer you avoid it, the heavier the consequences become. Refusing to grow is like living in a burning house and complaining about the smoke. You can fool others for a while. You can hide behind money, charm, muscles, followers. But eventually, life strips away the masks. And what's left is not the man you wish you were. It's the man you've built. So look at your life right now. What have you built? Is it strong? Or is it built on excuses, broken promises, and shallow wins? Are you the kind of man who blames the world when things go wrong? Or the kind who takes ownership, even when it's hard? Because here's something every wise man knows. You're not responsible for everything that happens to you, but you are 100% responsible for how you respond. You don't have to stay foolish. Foolishness isn't a permanent condition. It's a choice you keep making. And every day you avoid growth. You're choosing smallness over greatness, ego over wisdom, comfort over legacy. But the good news? The moment you choose growth, everything changes. Growth doesn't require perfection. It just requires humility. It starts when you say, I was wrong. I don't know, but I want to learn. I hurt people, and I need to make it right. I'm scared, but I won't let that stop me. That kind of honesty is terrifying, but it's also freeing. Because the man who can face himself, truly face himself, is the man who becomes unstoppable. You want to be respected? Grow. You want to be loved? Grow. You want to leave a legacy your children will be proud of? Grow. But if you keep clinging to your pride, your outdated beliefs, your fear of change, then don't be surprised when your life keeps falling apart. Don't be surprised when good people walk away, when doors keep closing, when joy feels like a distant memory. Foolish men blame the storm. Wise men build the shelter. And here's one more truth. The world doesn't need more loud, arrogant, broken men pretending they have it all together. The world needs men who are courageous enough to grow, men who are strong enough to be soft, humble enough to ask for help, bold enough to change. So here's the final question I leave you with. What kind of man are you becoming? Not what kind of man do you wish to be seen as. Not what kind of man your friends think you are. But in the silence, when the performance ends, when you're alone with your thoughts, who are you really becoming? Because foolishness may look strong for a moment, but wisdom lasts. And if you see even one of these signs in your life, don't panic. Don't run. Don't deny it. Face it. That's where transformation begins. You were never meant to stay small. You were never meant to be a fool. There's more in you. And now is the time to rise.